वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते संकर्षणदासधिकारिणीति नामिने। नमो प्रभुपादनुगा प्रेममूर्ति कृपत्मने गौरदेश विकसातोत्तम भक्तिवार्षिणे। नमः ओं विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पश्चात् देशतारिणे। हरे कृष्णा। So we are in second chapter. We had completed till 22nd verse, where we saw Krishna given a comparison, kind of like just like we change our old garments and wear new ones. Similarly, the living entity also at the time of death gives up the old body and uh, takes on a, like the soul gets a new rejuvenated body. So today we'll continue from 23rd verse, where Krishna is continuing to mention different characteristics of the soul. Okay, anyone would volunteer to read this verse?
Hare Krishna Mataji, may I read?
Okay, Hare Krishna Mataji. So let me just mute myself, then you can continue.
This is verse number Mataji.
This is second chapter,
2.23.
23rd, yes.
23rd. Hare Krishna. Nanam chindanti shastrani, nanam dahati pavaka, nam janam kledayanti apo na shoshayati matura. Synonym. Na, never, enam, this house. Chidanti can cut into pieces. Shastrani weapons, na, never, enam, this foul. Dati burns. Pavaka fire, na, never, cha, also. Enam, this foul. Kledayanti moisten. Apah water, na, never, shosayanti rise. Maruta wind. Maruta wind. Translation. The sound can never be cut to pieces by any weapon, nor burned by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by the wind. Purpose. All kinds of weapons, swords, flame weapons, rain weapons, tornado weapons, etc., are unable to kill the spirit soul. It appears that there were many kinds of weapons made of earth, water, air, etc. In addition to the modern weapon of fire, even the nuclear weapons of the modern age are classified as fire weapons, but formerly there were other weapons made of all different types of material elements. Fire weapons are counteracted by water weapons, which are now unknown to modern science, nor do modern scientists have knowledge of tornado weapons. Nonetheless, the soul can never be cut into pieces nor annihilated by any number of weapons, regardless of scientific devices. The Mayavadi cannot explain how the individual soul came into existence simply by ignorance and consequently became covered by the illusionary energy, nor was it ever possible to cut the individual souls from the original supreme soul. Rather, the individual souls are eternally separated part of the supreme soul because they are atomic. Individual souls eternally, Sanatana, they are prone to be covered by the illusionary energy and thus they become separated from the association of the Supreme Lord. Just as the sparks of a fire, although one in quality with the fire, are prone to be extinguished extinguished when out of the fire. In the Vara Purana, the living entities are described as separated parts and parcels of the Supreme. They are eternally so according to the Bhagavad Gita also. So even after being liberated from illusion, the living entity remains a separate identity, as is evident from the teachings of the Lord to Arjuna. Arjuna became liberated by the knowledge received from Krishna, but he never became one with Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Mataji. Okay, so the soul can never be cut to pieces by any weapon, nor burnt by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by the wind. So on the battlefield, Arjuna's fear was that all these family members will be killed. But what Krishna is saying, the soul, it cannot be cut by, into pieces by any weapons, or it cannot be made, wet by water, or it will not burn in the fire. And practically, if we see, living entities are present everywhere. Modern science says that there can be no life on moon or in the sun planet, but from scriptures we understand that there are living entities in the sun, in the sun planet. That's a Surya Dev, what we say. So the predominating deity of the sun is Surya Dev. So there are living entities who are residing in the, they have a different kind of a body, just like if we are left into the, we are put in the ocean, we cannot live in the ocean, unless we have all the equipments to breathe and all. But fish, they live in the waters, so they have a different kind of body to live in the water, but we have a different kind of body to live on land. Similarly, on different planetary systems, they have a different kind of a body, by which they can live on those planets. So, anyways, the soul cannot be burnt by fire, or moistened by water, or withered by the wind. Now, Prabhupada is mentioning the purport: all kinds of weapons, swords, flame weapons, rain weapons, tornado weapons, etc., unable to kill the spirit soul. So, from this, we can understand that earlier times we may claim to be more advanced, so called advanced, but earlier times they were much more advanced than we are. Because Prabhupada mentions here that there are different kinds of weapons made of earth, water, fire, ether, etc. But presently, the topmost, if you see, number one in the list of weapons is a nuclear weapon, which is somewhat like a fire weapon. But there were, weapons made from different other elements, from, material elements as well. For example, he mentions firearms were counteracted by water weapons. So I don't know what is the water weapon in the present, so-called, if they have something like that, which are now unknown to modern science. So yes, Prabhupada is mentioning it. There is nothing. I mean, scientists have no clue of what is this water weapon. Nor do modern scientists have knowledge of tornado weapons. Nonetheless, the soul can never be cut to pieces nor annihilated by any number of weapons, regardless of scientific devices. So, if you see, if you have read Krishna book, in one of the chapters, when Lord Krishna, I think, is fighting with uh, Banasura, yes. He's fighting with Banasura. Then, because the Asura, he was a devotee of Lord Shiva. So, Lord Shiva took the side of the Asura and was fighting with Krishna. And I think, is it there? I don't remember which pastime was that, but that is a pastime where, oh yes, it's the same one. So it so happened that in order to mm, Lord Shiva, he because he was fighting on the opposite side, from the side of the asura, so to protect him, he called for a weapon called Shiva Jwara, which is like um, intense heat. It will something like a fire weapon, something like that. So to counteract that, Lord Krishna, he released his Narayana Jwara, which is uh, certainly very cooling, which creates a very cooling effect. And ultimately the Narayan Jwara was victorious, of course. So I just gave an example. I just remembered this because here we were seeing about different kinds of weapons. So there is something called, which can create a cooling effect, and there are something called fire weapons, tornado weapons. There were presently the modern science has no idea about all these weapons. The Mayavadi cannot explain how the individual soul came into existence simply by ignorance and consequently became covered by illusory energy. So, if you see, Prabhupada in his purports always mentions about what the you know about the Mayavadis, the impersonalists, and their misinterpretation of the scriptures actually. So the Mayavadis may claim that okay, we are actually we are just playing, we are God, like we are just playing hide and seek in our present material body, something like that they say. But they cannot explain that how you came into this material world, how you got covered by ignorance. If you are God, then how could you be covered by ignorance? So they cannot explain all these things. Nor was it ever possible to cut the individual souls from the original supreme soul. Rather than individual souls, they exist eternally as separated parts of the Lord. Because they are atomic individual souls, eternally Sanatana, they are prone to be covered by, just like if there is a big fire and a small spark of fire comes out, or a small little bit spark, or it comes out of the main fire and falls on the sand, on the land. So it gets extinguished. It is no more fiery. But again, if that small particle, let's say of charcoal or something, it is put back into that big fire, then again it retains its fiery nature. So similarly, we are spiritual beings, but we are separated from the Lord. We have forgotten the Lord, and we are like fallen into this material world. But when we again reconnect, um, when we again get connected to him by this process of bhakti, then we can come back to our, be re-established in our eternal constitutional position as parts and parcels of the Lord. In the Varaha Purana, the living entities are described as separated parts and parcels of the Supreme. They are eternally so according to the Bhagavad Gita also. So even after being liberated from illusion, the living entity remains a separate in identity, as is evident from the teachings of the Lord to Arjuna. So from the very beginning, from 2.11, yes, um, from there itself, Krishna mentions that okay, these are all living entities. I mean, all these individuals, the kings and whoever is present on the battlefield, they are all individuals. They existed in the past as individuals. They will continue to exist in the future also. So he confirms the individuality of all the living entities, and also that I mean, they are eternal, eternally they are existing as individuals. That means there is no concept of merging to become the supreme, or merging with the supreme. There is no such concept. Arjuna became okay. So even after being liberated from illusion, living entity remains a separate individual. Arjuna became liberated by the knowledge received from Krishna, but he never became one with Krishna. Okay. Now we'll go to next verse, 24th verse. Anyone else would like to read this verse? Neelam Mataji, would you like to read?
Yes, Mataji. छेदो यम दाहो यम लकेदो शोष्य एव च नित्यः सर्वगता स्थाणुर्चलोऽयं सनातनः. Acheda, unbreakable, I am this soul. Adhyaya, unable to burn, I am this soul. Ekledhya, insoluble. Asho, shayaha, not able to dry, eva, certainly. Cha, and nitya, everlasting. Sarvagata, all pervading. Sthunaha, unchangeable. Achala, immovable. I am this soul. Sanatan, eternal, the same. This individual soul is unbreakable, insoluble, and can be neither burned nor dried. He is everlasting, present everywhere, unchangeable, immovable, and eternally the same. All these qualifications of the atomic soul definitely prove that the individual soul is eternally the atomic particle of the spirit whole, and he remains the same atom eternally without change. The theory of monism is very difficult to apply in this case because the individual soul is never expected to become one homogeneously. After liberation from material contamination, the atomic soul may prefer to remain as a spiritual spark in the effulgent rays of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but the intelligent soul enters into the spiritual planet to associate with the Personality of Godhead. The word Sarvagata, all pervading, is significant because there is no doubt that living entities are all over God's creation. They live on the land, in the water, in the air, within the earth, and even within the fire. The belief that they are sterilized in fire is not acceptable because it is clearly stated here that the soul cannot be burned by fire. Therefore, there is no doubt that there are living entities also in the sun planet with suitable bodies to live there. If the sun globe is uninhibited, then the word Sarvagata, living everywhere, becomes meaningless. Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Mataji. Okay. So this individual soul is unbreakable. So further, Krishna is saying it cannot be broken into pieces, or it is not, it doesn't get it's not soluble in some this are, it's insoluble, and can be neither burnt nor dried. He is everlasting, present everywhere, unchangeable, immovable, and eternally the same. It's not that today I mean I'm a particular soul, and it's not that after a few years or a few days or something there is a change in the composition of the soul and some other soul gets mixed or something like that, merging or something. No, it doesn't happen. So it's eternally the same. It's as it is. All these qualifications of the atomic soul definitely prove that the individual soul is eternally the atomic particle of the spirit whole, and he remains the same atom eternally without change. So there is no change. The theory of monism is very difficult to apply in this case because the individual soul is never expected to become one homogeneously. So monism is the same impersonal, or the Mayavadi thing that there is merging and all. They become one. Everything becomes one after liberation. So that is not the case, which is very clear from these particular statements of the Lord. After liberation from material contamination, the atomic soul may prefer to remain as a spiritual spark in the effulgent rays of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, now in the spiritual sky. Now, if you remember in second chapter, I think 12th verse, 12th verse, I think. Prabhupada in the purport had mentioned about Brahman realization, Paramatma realization, and Bhagwan realization. So, Brahman realization is the impersonalist who come to the understanding that okay, supreme means he is just an effulgence. So their destination is what? They may go to the spiritual sky, if they may get into the spiritual world, but they will remain in the spiritual sky, because their understanding was that okay, the Supreme Lord is effulgence, and that effulgence what they are referring to is actually the Brahma Jyoti, which is nothing but the transcendental effulgence coming from the body of the Lord. But they have no idea about the personality, the Supreme Lord as a personality, as a person. So they have a partial understanding, that is okay, supreme means the effulgence. So their destination is they can go to the spiritual world, but they will remain floating in the spiritual sky. And Paramatma realization is a little the next step, but the topmost is the Bhagavan realization, where one understands that okay, Krishna is that supreme personality of Godhead, and Paramatma realization, Paramatma form of the Lord is the plenary expansion, and then Brahma Jyoti is the effulgence from his body. So devotees or one who are on the platform of Bhagavan realization can actually enter into the spiritual planets. As earlier we discussed also, there are spiritual planets in the spiritual world, just like there are material planets in this material world. Spiritual world also there are different planets, innumerable planets called the Vaikunthas, and each of the Vaikunthas, the Supreme Lord is being worshipped in a particular form. In some he is worshipped as Narayana, in some he is worshipped as Pradyumna form, or in different expansions, because the Lord has innumerable expansions. However, the topmost of all these Vaikunthas is the Krishna Loka, where he himself is present in his original two-hand Krishna form. So one who is intelligent, they will want to enter into the spiritual planets, and that is possible by becoming a devotee. Okay, the word Sarvagata, all pervading, is significant because there is no doubt that living entities, so we discussed this just now, that living entities are present all over the Lord's creation. One cannot say that oh, there is no life on the moon planet, or there is no life, there cannot be any life on sun. So no, that is not the case. Living entities are present everywhere on earth, water, fire, ether, everywhere. The belief that they are sterilized in fire is not acceptable, because it is clearly stated here that the soul cannot be burnt by fire. Therefore, there is no doubt that there are living entities also in the sun planet with suitable bodies. Now, they may have a different kind of a body, just like the example we saw, fish. Fish cannot live on the land. They have a particular body by which they can live only in water. Similarly, we have a particular body by which we can live on land. We cannot, somebody will put us in a pond or in an ocean. We cannot live there. We cannot survive there. If the sun globe is uninhabited, so yes, so all the planet system, sun, moon, stars, whatever you say, they there are living entities everywhere. Otherwise, this point that living entities are present everywhere, it would become meaningless. So Prabhupada is mentioning it here. Okay, next okay, I'll stop here. Rather, we'll open it up for discussion, and you can please share some point from this, maybe something new you came across in these verses, or you can just highlight a particular point from here, or if you have any queries, we can discuss that. Hare Krishna.
I have a question, Mataji. Can I ask?
Yes, Mataji.
सेल्फ रियलाइजेशन क्या है माता जी? मतलब हम how we know ourselves and what is the real meaning of self realization, and through our self realization we can go to God realization, and what that process?
Hare Krishna. So, very nice and very important question. I was hearing a lecture of Prabhupada where he was mentioning that human life is meant for self realization. There is no other business in this human form of life. We are actually engaged in eating, sleeping, mating, defending, which even the animals are doing. If we remain on that platform, then we are like, of course, animals. But human, this body is provided for self realization. Now, what is self realization? To come to the point of understanding and realization that who am I? First thing is, who am I? Who am I? I'm a spiritual being, spirit, soul. So what is my source? My source is that supreme personality of Godhead, or God in general terms. So what does God means? Who is he? So scriptures mention he is Krishna. He is the supreme personality of Godhead, and we are all emanations of the Lord. So we are eternal servants of the Lord. Eternal servant, what is a servant? Or part and parcel of the Lord. So what does a part and parcel do? It serves the whole. Just like I have my hand, our hand will serve the body. Hand will not act independently. If you take a gulab jamun, your hand will not squeeze that gulab jamun in the fingers. Rather, it will put it into the mouth. So it is helping or supporting the body, or kind of serving the body, and that's how the hand also becomes nourished, or is properly situated. Similarly, to realize this thing, that I am a spiritual being, I'm not a male or a female or an Indian, or XYZ material designation, but I'm a spiritual being, and my source is that supreme personality of Godhead. So because I'm coming from him, I'm his part and parcel, so I'm meant to serve him. So now at present we have just a theoretical understanding, but we haven't come to the realization because we are not following the process properly. The process, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, so whatever is given in bhakti, when we are not able to follow it properly, so we haven't come to the point of realization. We just know it theoretically. When we come to the point of realization, then we will be free from these material designations. We will be free from the influence of the three modes of material nature. Then we will be completely self-realized. Did that help, Mother? Did that help you?
Yes, Mataji, thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you for your question. Okay, anyone else? Just I wanted to mention, if you are not able to speak, there's chat box here, so please try to type whatever you want to say in the chat box.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Mataji, my question is, as per the verse we have read today, that soul is indestructible, neither cutted in pieces, not be burned by fire. Then must be there should be any finite number of soul, because it is not destructible. Or in the universe, is it a finite number of soul God has created, or infinite number of soul has been created by Krishna? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Technical question, huh? Okay. So, Krishna is the supreme enjoyer. Krishna, he's Purusha, so he has his independence, how he wants to enjoy. So, for his enjoyment, he has emanated so many living entities, and practically the innumerable living entities, so that he can have innumerable relationship with all these living entities. And therefore, just like how do you say that, if you have friends and relatives and all, a common person in the material world has a number of friends, and so they enjoy with as many number of friends, they enjoy with them, go for parties and this and that. So similarly, Supreme Lord, he emanates living entities like we are his children. So he emanates innumerable living entities to have innumerable relationship with them. And that is how he enjoys unlimitedly. And we are all meant for giving enjoyment to that Supreme Lord. And out of that, I am just giving a little more thing. Gurudev was, somebody asked that how many living entities in the material world, are they some finite number or something like that? So Gurudev mentions there are total like innumerable living entities, and out of that, a small fraction, a very small fraction of living entities, they fall into the material world. But that small fraction itself is like infinity divided by 0 is again infinity. So there are infinite number of living entities caught up in the material world, whereas in the spiritual world there are much more living entities who are properly situated and are serving the Lord. So overall, conclusion to your question is, yes, there are innumerable, infinite number of living entities.
Thank you, Mataji. One more question I have, that I have read somewhere that Krishna will lead you to Guru, and Guru will lead you to Krishna. So Mataji, if is that I am worshipping Krishna, I am chanting, then if Krishna wants that, I will get Guru. So is I'm saying right, or there is some misleading or what? Kindly clear my confusion. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yes, Krishna is present as Paramatma, as we all know that. At least in India, everybody, a theistic person, knows that Krishna, is present as Paramatma. So when he sees some living entity sincerely looking for self-realization, or has sincere queries know about the Supreme, or questions like Athata Brahma Jigyasa, who am I, why do I exist, what is the purpose of my life, and so on. So when he sees this sincerity, he arranges for that particular living entity to come in contact with the bona fide spiritual master. And practically it is said that the Chaitya Guru, so Paramatma is said to be Chaitya Guru. So he externally he manifests as the spiritual master. So spiritual master is, that's why he said, what confidential servitor of the Lord. So by the mercy of Krishna, one gets Guru, and also it is not possible for one to approach Krishna or serve Krishna directly. Krishna doesn't accept it. When there is a verse um, in Adi Purana, I think Krishna says to Arjuna, ये मे भक्त जना पार्थ न मे भक्त स्थिते जना मद भक्तनम च भक्त स्ते मे भक्त तमामता. Oh my dear Arjuna, those who are my devotees are actually not my devotees, but those who are devotees of my devotees, they are actually my devotees. Something like this. I may miss one or two words or something, but yeah. So there he says to Arjuna that those who are actually devotees of my devotees, they are I accept them as my devotees. Somebody comes to me directly, oh Krishna, I'm your devotee. So Krishna doesn't accept them as the devotee. So by the mercy of Guru, one gets Krishna. There are so many bhajans. In one of them, it is mentioned. Um, हाँ, कृष्णा से तुम्हारा कृष्णा दिते पारो. So Vaishnava, a pure devotee or Vaishnav Thakur, he has Krishna. Krishna is the personal property of a pure devotee. So it is like Krishna se tumhara Krishna did. So Krishna is your personal property. You have Krishna, so you have the power to give Krishna to me. So like that. So Krishna, by the mercy of Krishna, one gets a bona fide spiritual master, and by the mercy of the spiritual master, one can get Krishna. So they are like, Gurudev says, they are like parallel lines. It's not that one will just stick to, okay, I will serve Krishna, or like that, or I will go to the Guru, but I don't serve Krishna. So it is not possible. One has to both, they are like parallel lines. One has to be properly situated.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you so much for helping us in our Bhakti Marga. Whenever doubts come in our mind, our daily sessions help us a lot. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. It is all I have heard from the classes or from Srila Prabhupada's books. So I'm just repeating it. I myself don't know anything. So thank you so much for your question, Mataji. Okay, I can see something in the chat box. Anisha Mataji and Pramila Mataji, if it is possible for you, you can also either add some point or something. You can type it in the chat box. There's no problem with that. Unmarried mother, why are girls not given fire? Right? Because there must be 5 things for the body to be liberated. Like, I don't understand your question, Mataji. Why are girls not given fire? I'm not getting it. I'm sorry, I'm not understanding your question. Maybe you can clarify that. I'll wait for it. Okay, this is not related, this is some ritualistic thing. This is not related to some, uh, bhakti. It doesn't matter whether one is given fire or doesn't given fire or whatever. As long as we are alive, what we are doing, that is what matters. When we are alive, are we practicing bhakti? Are we Krishna conscious? After that, what happens, what doesn't happen, that hardly matters. So it doesn't whether one is given fire. There are so many ritualistic things and all these things, but that is not related to bhakti. So after death, the soul is already gone from the body. So whatever happens to the body, it hardly matters. The soul is already, is destination of the soul to take a particular kind of body is already determined. Once the soul leaves the body, everything is already set up, you know. So what happens to the dead body, it hardly matters. So as long as we are alive, what we are doing, how, what kind of a consciousness we are developing, that is more important. That will determine whether we will come back taking another material body, or we will go back to Godhead and be free from the four problems, that is birth, death, old age and disease, janma, mrityu, jara, vyadi. I hope it helps you, Mataji, Shivangi Mataji. जी हाँ, तुलसी माला पहनने का रूल ये है कि आप चैंटिंग कर रहे होंगे. You have to be chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra, of course, and you should take only Krishna Prasadam. What is Krishna Prasadam? You can cook nicely without onion, garlic, of course vegetarian items without onion, garlic, and offer it to Lord Krishna with a tulasi leaf, and then you can take it, you can have it as prasadam. सो तुलसी माला जब हम पहनते हैं, हम कृष्ण प्रसादम के सिवाय कुछ भी नहीं लेते हैं. वी डोंट टेक एनीथिंग अपार्ट फ्रॉम कृष्ण प्रसादम. एंड ऑफ कोर्स 4 रेगुलेटिव प्रिंसिपल्स जो हैं, वी हैव टू फॉलो दैट. नो मीट ईटिंग, इट इंक्लूड्स मीट, फिश, एग्स, ऑनियन, गार्लिक एंड ऑल दीज थिंग्स. No meat eating, no intoxication, which includes no coffee, no tea, no coke, which contains cocoa and caffeine, all those things. No intoxication, no gambling, and no illicit sex. So one has to be following these 4 regulative principles, chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra and having only Krishna Prasadam. Then one can wear Tulsi Mala. But in the beginning, our focus, instead of rules and regulations, if one is serious, they will want to know the rules and regulations and try to go further. But in the beginning, one can just chant. There is no hard and fast rules for chanting. अब कभी भी कहीं भी, morning, evening, at night, you can chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra on the beads. जो तुलसी माला या नीम beads भी मिलते हैं, so you can chant on those beads Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So there is no hard and fast rule for that. और धीरे धीरे कोई और ज़्यादा अच्छे से करना चाहते हैं, then yes, they can follow further things. Okay, I'm happy that you asked a question, and I'm happy that happy to see you here today. Thank you so much, Mataji. Okay, so I think I should close now. It's almost like 5 o'clock. Thank you so much, Matajis, for joining and for actively participating. That was the best part. That's how it makes the discussion more interesting. So thank you so much, Matajis. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Matajis, Danvat Pranam.